Permission to move out the well.
Granted.
Even the clearest and most perfect circumstantial evidence is likely to be at fault, after all, and therefore ought to be received with great caution. Take the case of any pencil sharpened by any man. If you have witnesses, you will find he did it with a knife. But if you take simply the aspect of the pencil, you will say he did it with his teeth. It was many years ago that the great Mark Twain warned us against rushing to judgment and leaping to conclusions, to warn us against placing faith in speculation and coincidence, and to deliver a powerful message about justice. Obviously, today we're not dealing with the mechanism to sharpen a pencil. We are dealing with the very real and very titanic issue of a man's life. Quite simply, there is zero room for error. Ladies and gentlemen, from what we've seen here today, the prosecution's case is a complete train wreck. It is at best utter nonsense, and at worst a complete and total travesty of justice. Today we've seen the prosecution attempt to twist and mangle the evidence to their own ends, parade witness after witness to give testimony that amounts to mere speculation. Sad attempt after sad attempt to hide and obfuscate the evidence. This is a court of law. Here we deal in facts, in truth. The prosecution can offer you speculation, what-ifs, maybes, possiblies, the stuff of playground gossip. The prosecution can certainly offer you a lot of that. But what I guarantee they can't offer you is one single piece of direct evidence that John Diamond did knowingly, willfully, deliberately, and with premeditation kill Miss Trudy Doyle on that December morning. They would love to trick and bamboozle you into thinking that John Diamond was anything but a capable and dedicated police officer. They presented no evidence to the contrary. In fact, the defense holds it's the only thing the prosecution is able to indict Mr. Diamond on is one count each of love, compassion, and duty. Let's examine the prosecution's case. What witnesses did the prosecution call to help bolster their fantastical theory? First, we had Beth Kelly, truck stop cafe waitress who can't testify to anything with certainty besides the fact that she saw John Diamond and Miss Doyle in the vestibule at the same time. Next, we have Joseph Foster, a customer who saw the exact same thing. Nothing. I repeat to you, ladies and gentlemen, neither of the prosecution's eyewitnesses saw anything. The prosecution wishes to force us to rely on what they heard. And what did they hear? The short answer is the prosecution can't tell us. Between the testimony of Ms. Kelly and Mr. Foster, there is a fatal flaw, a fundamental inconsistency in one of the most basic tenets of the prosecution's case. How much time elapsed between the first and second shot? Besides a huge variation in the times the witnesses give, which range from anywhere from 5 to 10 seconds, the witnesses can't even agree. And if there's no agreement, how can we be expected to accept this portion of their testimonies? In addition to this rogues gallery, we have a sergeant who caught himself in a lie on the stand, and a coroner who can't testify to anything besides the fact that Miss Trudy Doyle died from internal injuries. It is plain to see that even with a cursory examination, the prosecution's case begins to crumble. I ask you, where is the motive? Where is Mr. Diamond's incentive to kill Miss Doyle? What possible reason could he have to take her life? Where is the evidence that Mr. Diamond killed Miss Doyle of his own free will, despite having nothing to gain? Where is the evidence that Mr. Diamond killed her deliberately? Where is the evidence that Mr. Diamond planned to kill Trudy Doyle beforehand? Quite simply, where is the evidence that proves any aspect of the prosecution's case? Nowhere. Let us move to the defense side of the argument. Today you heard from Officer John Madden, veteran police officer who testified to Mr. Diamond's love for Trudy Doyle and plans to move to California, regardless of Ms. Doyle's answer. Then we heard from Estelle Mason, the only witness who saw the event, the only witness who viewed the exchange between Ms. Doyle and Mr. Diamond, the only witness who can keep her story straight, testified that Miss Doyle lunged toward Mr. Diamond, and then she heard 2 shots. Then we heard from Mr. Diamond himself, the officer who courageously took the stand to offer us the truth. Trudy Doyle was depressed. He was willing to help her through her depression, saving her life on 2 occasions. He was willing to hold her hand through the darkness, in preparation for the life he hoped to build with her. This evidence only goes to show something else we heard from Mr. Diamond. From Mr. Diamond's own mouth, we have heard the one incontrovertible fact in this trial today. The one fact that no witness today, and indeed no man on this earth, can testify against. And that is the fact that John Diamond loved Trudy Doyle. John Diamond was ready for a fresh start, to leave behind Alexandria and start a new life in California. He asked Trudy Doyle, the love of his life, to go with him. But of course, loving someone sometimes means respecting their choices. John Diamond was prepared to leave for California, regardless of whether or not Trudy would go with him. He went to the truck stop cafe as a final romantic gesture to convince the love of his life to leave behind the things that were forcing to a downward spiral, to make a fresh start with him. She said no, but she did more than that. She lunged toward Mr. Diamond and the firearm he had in his pocket, grabbed it, and released the safety. No one knows what Trudy Doyle would have done with a loaded weapon. Neither I, nor the prosecution, nor Mr. Diamond knew what this depressed woman would do, whether she would shoot herself or others. In fact, we just heard in the prosecution's closing argument that she could have done damage. John Diamond did the right thing, the sensible thing. John Diamond did the thing that I hope I would have the courage to do when faced with such a situation. He struck her arm from underneath to disarm her, dislodging the gun, which he instinctively reached for. But then something horrible happened. A twist of gravity or physics or fate. He brushed the trigger, and the gun discharged. As he saw what the gun had did to Trudy, the woman he had loved and cared for and cherished, understandably, every muscle in his body tensed up. He lost all control. To John's shock and horror, the tensing of his muscles caused the gun to fire again. John Diamond did the moral thing, the sensible thing, the right thing. He feared for his life. He feared for Trudy's life. What happened was a horrible accident. A horrible, terrible, awful accident. It was the last thing anyone could have wanted, and it was certainly the last thing Mr. Diamond wanted. Afterward, John Diamond waited with his beloved to enjoy their last few precious moments together. That is John Diamond's story. I see no reason to claim he's telling anything but the absolute, honest truth. It is the Commonwealth's duty to disprove this. The judge has instructed you on the relevant law in this case. He has informed you, as I have, about the nature of circumstantial evidence, the kind the prosecutors have relied on in this case. When the Commonwealth relies on circumstantial evidence, it is not sufficient that the circumstances create a suspicion of guilt, however strong, or even a probability of guilt. The evidence as a whole must exclude every reasonable theory of innocence. In addition, the burden is on the Commonwealth to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the killing was not accidental. The law is clear in this matter, and despite the prosecution's insistences, they are subject to it. As jurors, you are triers of fact. Do not let the prosecution attempt to twist this notion. We are not here to be triers of suspicion, of possibility, of what makes the better story. We are here to decide whether or not the Commonwealth has proven beyond a reasonable doubt the necessary elements of murder. That John Diamond maliciously, willfully, deliberately, and with premeditation killed Trudy Doyle, which they've simply failed to do. As the great civil libertarian Clarence Darrow once said, "You can protect your liberties in this world only by protecting the other man's freedom. You can be free only if I am free." As you retire to the jury chambers, I want you to place yourself in Mr. Diamond's shoes. Face against the Commonwealth's terrible conviction machine. A prosecution hell-bent on putting as many people behind bars as possible. Willing to sign a man's life away on mere circumstantial evidence and suspicion. Willing to put a man away for life through whatever flimsy, nonsensical evidence they can muster. Justice be damned. You can be free only if I am free. Your rights are protected if and only if John Diamond's rights are protected. Every man is guaranteed a fair trial. Every man is guaranteed due process of law. And every man is guaranteed the right to not be imprisoned unjustly. Our courts are built on the premise of innocent until proven guilty. Our judicial system prescribes it. Our founding fathers had the wisdom to implement it. And today, justice demands it. Suspicion and possibility are not evidence of any kind. I implore you, reject the prosecution's spin and deception. Reject the notion that a man should never again feel the warm spring air, with the sun upon his face or the wind at his back, on mere coincidence and speculation. As I look in each of your eyes, there is not a trace of doubt in my mind that you will render a fair and impartial verdict. I know that you fine citizens, those who sacrifice so much time and energy in the pursuit of justice, will do what is right. Look at all the evidence. Consider everything that has been said today. Consider the ideals of freedom, justice, and the protections the American judicial system affords those unjustly accused. John Diamond stands before us today pleading for his life. He stands before a prosecution that has drawn him, and indeed, all of us, into a tangled web that has proven nothing. I beg you, do not let John Diamond become the victim of an unjust system. Today we have the power to set things right. John Diamond sits before you humbly, asking for a basic human right, something so many of us take for granted every day. Freedom. Please grant him this. Find John Diamond not guilty.